I've introduced 3 bills this legislative session to try to help my district on the eastern plains of Colorado. The first deals with the evaporative losses off of Bonnie Reservoir. It's part of our interstate compact problem with Nebraska and Kansas, and we can't afford to continue to pay for evaporative losses off of a lake that's already drying up. We need to choose farmers over fish in this case, and we have to move this bill forward. I've also introduced a bill that allows people who are more than 100 years from impacting the flow of the stream to operate their wells, mostly along the South Platte. I have some constituents who have a farm about 40 miles south of Brush. Their wells won't impact the flow of the stream for almost 450 years. And I think that when you see something that's that wrong, you should just write it if you can. That's what my bill on the 100-year flow of water will do. The last bill that I've introduced as part of my package of 3 for eastern Colorado allows us to use telemedicine to provide mental health care services for our Medicaid patients in eastern Colorado primarily. Of course it works statewide, but in the wide open spaces of eastern Colorado, it's often just as expensive to get a patient to the doctor as it is for the service provided for the doctor. The telemedicine bill will help alleviate that problem a lot. I plan to introduce a couple more bills that have more of a statewide concern next week, and I'll tell you about them at that time. Eastern Colorado is facing some real challenges at this time. We have an interstate compact problem on the Republican River that I'm trying to address with my Bonnie Reservoir evaporation bill. It feels like I'm fighting against the administration on this thing, though. There are agencies who appear to want to make us pay for the evaporative losses each and every year off of that reservoir. We just can't do that. The other problem facing us is related to the oil and gas industry in our area. So many of my good friends make great livings working for the oil and gas companies that are now developing our area. But it's a marginal area, not like many of the better areas on the western slope that have drawn the fire from so many environmentalists. My concern is that those same environmentalists are going to shut down the operations on the eastern plains while just making it more challenging to work on the western slope. I can't let that happen, and I feel like I'm fighting the administration on that one too. Every year some interesting bills are introduced into the Colorado State Legislature. This year, 4 bills are starting in the House that are fun to comment on. The first is a bill that will make it possible for kids to get out of dissection of animals in science class. How about that? Now, I didn't like the smell of formaldehyde either, but I don't think we need a state law mandating school policy to help kids who don't like the smell of formaldehyde or think they might throw up get out of dissecting an animal. I think that teachers can handle that on their own, don't you? Another one is the Fair Chase Hunt Bill, which means you can't hunt an animal that's inside of an enclosure, no matter how big the enclosure is, even if that enclosure is 10,000 acres. And the elk has a much better chance of surviving my hunt in 10,000 acres than he would about anywhere else. Another one is the bill that bans the possession of the tools of graffiti. I hope they don't look in my garage, because I'm sure they'll find the ladder, the spray paint, and everything else you need to be a graffiti artist. Can't we find a better way to deal with this problem? And the last, of course, is the bill that will name the state reptile. I get to introduce 5 bills every year in the Senate to try to help people in Colorado solve Colorado problems. I'm glad I'm not the one introducing the state reptile bill.